Bubby, if you don't mind me. I know everybody in the family calls you Bubby, but your real name is Bertha.
Yes.
Why were you called Bubby?
I'm called Bubby because of Peter's father, my brother Jack. Julius on his birth certificate, but he was always called Jack from birth. He couldn't say Bertha, no, Brana, as Esther knows, was what I was called at that time. Until I went to school and my birth certificate was produced at the age of 3, I remember sitting on the headmistress's lap, and I wonder now, I was such a little one, they didn't generally admit children as young as that, but knowing my mother's position, they took me in early. They already had my good sisters, Dina and Faye. What do I know?
Okay, so you say your mother's position, and that relates to your father Jacob.
My father Jacob was separated for practically all of my life from my mother.
When did he leave your mother? How old were you?
I was 3, and my mother was pregnant with Jack.
Right.
Or perhaps just coming up to 3.
And do you remember him at all?
Yes, I had one memory of sight for a long time, but it is now just a literary memory. I remember the story of it. The one piece of furniture in the kitchen, living room, and indeed bedroom, when Jack grew too big to sleep with 3 sisters and one mother in the one bedroom. It was what you would call a chaise longue, so that the top of the sofa was raised up a bit. And we 3 girls were playing behind the sofa head. And we were apparently making too much noise, or messing about, or doing something that disturbed him. And we were called out, taken out from behind the sofa, and both my sisters, I remember, were slapped on the hand, not beaten, but slapped on the hand. And because I was too little, I was not. And I remember that moment in my life. My elder sisters, when they were alive, did remember a little more. They remembered being taken to shul on one occasion, one each on either side of my father. I would guess it would be something like Simchas Torah or something like that, where children were welcomed and there was a little party and things for them. I'm only guessing, but probably Dina, told me about that.
And did you know why he left the family? Why he left your mother?
At the beginning, I didn't know. I know that my mother was bitter, and quite understandably so, because she was financially bereft. He had been a tailor, I think, before he lost his arm, and I later was given to understand by my mother, and not me personally, but within the family, when we talked, all of us little family, that he had lost an arm in the war, and that he had fallen in love, the story went, with a nurse who had helped him during his recovery and rehabilitation. There seemed to be long times when he was away, which is probably true. And eventually they were reunited after I was born, so I was told later. And Jack, Pete's dad, my mother was conceived during that reconciliation in the months that he was home. Then he left her pregnant and the 3 girls, and we never saw him. At least I never saw him. Jack made an effort through the Ministry of Pensions, because my mother had a very small pension, and on the separation agreement through the courts, my father used to pay my mother an allowance, part of his earnings, for his wife and children, and she had to go up to Shoreditch Police Station. Anybody who knows London knows it would be a fair way from Brady Street Mansions, which is a joke in itself, because we were in Whitechapel within the borough of Stepney, which had the least green space in the whole of the country. The least green space in the whole of the country. It was all tenements block. It was a Jewish ghetto, but I would very often go with her because Dina was already at school and could read. Faye was deputed to stay at home and hold Jack in her arm, you know, be looking after Jack. And there was one time, remembered, perhaps it was more than one, when my mother came home with Dina to find Jack asleep and Faye asleep, holding him. So these are some of the memories of my youth. I was by then probably already in school.
So did you know at all about the huge family that we've now discovered in America? Did you know that they existed?
I did know that my father had a family in America, and my mother came, so I believe, at the age of 12, and the school leaving age, education had already been in law in England, but the leaving age at the turn of the century when my mother arrived was 12, and my mother was already 12, so she came and went straight into work, lodging God knows where, a series of lodging, perhaps she even slept under the machine, who knows. Eventually, when she told us that she used to sew muffs, fur muffs, which were the fashion before the war. And I don't know where and when she met my father, that she never related to us. We knew he came from Yassi. We knew that, we were told that she came from a little village outside Yassi. I know a song, which I won't attempt to sing, but the words go about the Bucharest maiden jump off the Becher. If they see the Yasser maiden, the girls from Yassi, they're supposed to be a lot better. So it was obviously a song about Yassi maiden, from which I know my father's family came. Jack did discover my father's address. No, I'm wrong. They forwarded a letter from Jack, and it was when Jack lived in Finchley. Peter may well remember and be able to add to this, that my father was invited to lunch one weekend. I was asked if I wanted to go and meet him. I did not wish to go and meet him. The war was over. He knew where we lived. He knew we lived in the middle of the worst of the Blitz, and he had not bothered to find out if we were alive or dead or wherever we were. Jack never wanted to see him again, I think, and never did see him again. I think Dina didn't go. Jean tells me that Dina, like me, would not go to meet him then. Faye went and gave him a kiss. Perhaps she remembered him best, being the eldest. Or perhaps, I don't know.
So the family in America, as far as you were concerned, had disappeared? You didn't know where they were?
No, I knew they were in New York. I knew that I do remember one occasion when somebody came in. My mother had been to a village school where she was taught to read Yiddish. But coming over when she was only 12, and there being quite a number of years, when I was 3, 4, 5, it must have been into the 1920s, she didn't remember enough of it for reading and writing, handwriting, that somebody who could, a neighbour who could read Yiddish, came in and read the letter for her. And I know for sure that there was at least one letter, and there may have been more, that contained actually some money. Because one of the things I knew when I was 5 or 6 or 7 already, that there were $4 to the pound. I always knew that.
So they sent you some money. So you got some sort of more packages from America.
Well, it wasn't package. It was just a few notes. Right. It was some notes. It was some notes. Perhaps a little pack of notes. I don't know how much it was, but I know my mother valued it. And very probably, if that man could write a letter, she would have had him write back a letter of thanks. But the correspondence didn't go on for very long. Mm-hmm. Perhaps by then he was in touch with them. I don't know.
Okay.
I think I'm pretty sure he was in touch with his family.
And so what do you feel about finding such a large family that's in
I think it's
America?
wonderful that my father, perhaps, I don't know, my mother was bitter about him. There was no legal way that they could part. They had no money. He had difficulty with making a living, I think, with a lost arm. I do know that he tried to become a commercial traveller and failed. There was something to do with money. I always knew that he'd perhaps gone to the races and made a bet, because I always thought, until I went there, in 1963, I never went to Brighton because I always imagined it a den of sin because it had a race course. As soon as I went there, Stan and me, the year that we moved into our own Bromley home, and we packed both children off to Yugoslavia to stay with families, which I think Jack visited, and Peter may remember some about the Yugoslavian family, one of the families where Sally stayed. Yes, now where was I? Being 93, I get lost.
That's perfectly right. Now, I was asking you how you felt about having such a big American family.
I love the idea of it. I always wanted to be part of a family. I don't remember ever going to a Seder until I was grown up and belonged to the shul and went to a shul Seder and went to a very esteemed family Seder.
But you come to ours now. You come to ours now.
Now indeed I do. I go to Peter's for Seder.
Right.
Every year since I've been here.
So
Yes.
just a final word to everybody. Is there a final word you want to say to everyone in America, other than goodbye?
I want particularly to welcome the new people, to join in with being part of a good family, which has its good people and has its less good people. None of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. So my father being dead, what I do regret is that when we first gathered, my half-brother, the one he subsequently had with the woman he married, although I gathered that by then he had perhaps married a third time or had a third partner, perhaps his wife was dead, because I know that the son, Marco, could have come to the first reunion.
I think that's just changes of names rather than new partners that they...
I beg your pardon?
It's the changes of names of the son rather than having new partners. As far as we know, he only ever had 2 wives
Yes.
and 5 children, the 4 of you, and his son Jack, who became a Ventor. So is there a...
Who became?
His name became Ventor.
Ventor.
Anyway, can you think of a single characteristic or trait of all the Markoviches that you think might make them stand out from anybody else?
I don't know, the humour and the going on trying.
Right. Bubby, thank you very much indeed. That's wonderful.
Is that enough, Peter, do you think?
That's absolutely fine. Yes.
Good.
Let's turn that off. Okay.
Good.
No, that's very good indeed.
Good, Peter.